German Shepherd was pushed away by everyone. What baby did. Next, it left everyone in tears. What happened at the animal shelter that day would change everything. Before we begin this incredible story, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. The woman at the front desk shook her head for the third time that morning. "You don't want to see that one," she said, her voice carrying the weight of repeated warnings. "Trust me, we've had 12 families look at him this week. They all walked away." 5-year-old Sam pressed his small face against the glass door that separated the lobby from the kennel area. His breath fogged the surface as he stared down the long corridor of cages. His grandmother Rose stood behind him, her weathered hands resting gently on his shoulders. They'd been coming to the shelter every Saturday for the past month, looking for what Rose called the right fit. But Sam hadn't spoken more than a whisper about any of the dogs they'd seen, not since the funeral 6 months ago. "Maybe we should look at the puppies again," Rose suggested softly, trying to guide Sam away from the door, but the boy's feet remained planted, his eyes fixed on something at the far end of the hallway. In the last cage on the left, barely visible in the shadows, something moved. "That one," Sam whispered, the words so quiet Rose had to lean down to hear them. The shelter worker, Marcus, a young man with kind eyes and tired shoulders, followed Sam's gaze. His expression shifted from professional courtesy to genuine concern. "Oh no, sweetie. Not that one. He's not suitable for children." But Sam was already pushing through the door, his small feet carrying him down the concrete corridor with a determination that surprised everyone, including Rose. The other dogs barked and wagged their tails as he passed, pressing their noses against the chain-link barriers, desperate for attention. Sam didn't stop. He moved as if pulled by an invisible thread, straight to the last cage. Duke sat in the corner, his massive frame hunched and trembling. The German Shepherd's coat, once probably magnificent, was dull and patchy. Scars crisscrossed his muzzle and neck. His ears, which should have stood proud and alert, were pinned flat against his skull. But it was his eyes that told the real story. They held a depth of pain that seemed impossible for an animal to carry. "He was brought in 3 weeks ago," Marcus said quietly, having followed them down the hallway. "Found at a burned building on Maple Street. No collar, no chip. Won't let anyone near him. We've tried everything." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "The vet says he's healthy enough physically, but mentally, something broke in him." Rose watched her grandson kneel slowly in front of the cage. Sam's movements were deliberate, careful, as if he understood that sudden gestures would frighten the dog. Duke's eyes tracked the boy's movement, but his body remained coiled, ready to retreat further into the corner if needed. "What happened to him?" Rose asked Marcus, though she kept her eyes on Sam. Marcus shrugged, the gesture heavy with unspoken stories. "We don't know for sure. The building where he was found had been abandoned for months before the fire, but the way he reacts to certain things, smoke, loud noises, men in uniforms, we think he might have been a service dog, maybe military or police. Something happened to his handler, and he just gave up." Sam hadn't moved from his spot in front of the cage. He sat cross-legged on the cold concrete, his hands resting on his knees. Duke watched him with an intensity that made Rose's chest tighten. For long minutes, neither boy nor dog moved. The shelter around them seemed to fade away, leaving just the two of them in their bubble of shared silence. Then Sam did something that made Marcus gasp. He began to hum. It was soft at first, barely audible over the ambient noise of the shelter, but the melody was clear, haunting in its simplicity. Rose recognized it immediately. It was the lullaby David used to sing to Sam every night before bed. The same one they'd played at the funeral while Sam stood silent, unable to cry, unable to speak more than single words for months afterward. Duke's ear twitched, just slightly, but it was the first voluntary movement toward engagement anyone had seen from him. His massive head tilted almost imperceptibly, and for a moment, just a fleeting second, the terror in his eyes was replaced by something else. Recognition? Hope? It was gone before anyone could name it, but Sam had seen it. "He needs us, Grandma," Sam said, and Rose's hand flew to her mouth. It was the first complete sentence her grandson had spoken since the day they'd lowered David's casket into the ground. The words were clear, certain, carrying a conviction that seemed impossible for such a small child. Marcus started to protest. "I really don't think—" But Duke had moved. Not much, just a shift of his weight that brought him an inch closer to the front of the cage. His eyes never left Sam's face. The boy continued humming, the melody wrapping around them like a warm blanket on a cold night. "Has anyone else gotten him to move like that?" Rose asked, her voice barely above a whisper, afraid to break whatever spell was being woven between the boy and the dog. Marcus shook his head slowly. "No, he usually backs away when people approach. Yesterday, a man tried to pet him through the bars, and Duke—" He trailed off, but the implication was clear. "Can we go in?" Sam asked, looking up at Marcus with eyes that held too much understanding for a 5-year-old. "Absolutely not," Marcus said immediately. "I'm sorry, but Duke is classified as potentially dangerous. We can't risk—" "Please," Sam said, and that single word carried so much weight that Marcus found himself looking to Rose for help. Rose studied her grandson's face. In 6 months, she'd watched him retreat into himself, building walls that no amount of therapy or love seemed able to breach. Emma, his mother, worked herself to exhaustion, taking double shifts at the hospital to pay the bills, and, Rose suspected, to avoid the empty spaces in their home, where David's absence echoed loudest. But here, now, something had shifted in Sam. There was a light in his eyes that had been missing for so long. "What if we just open the cage door?" Rose suggested. "We won't go in. Just open it and see what happens." Marcus looked like he wanted to refuse, but something in Rose's expression stopped him. Maybe it was the desperation of a grandmother watching her grandchild slowly disappear into grief. Or maybe it was the way Duke had responded to Sam's humming. Whatever it was, Marcus found himself reaching for his keys. "I could lose my job for this," he muttered, but he was already moving toward the cage door. "Everyone stays back. If he shows any sign of aggression, we close it immediately." The lock clicked open with a sound that seemed to echo through the suddenly quiet shelter. Even the other dogs had stopped barking, as if they too sensed something important was happening. Marcus pulled the door open just a few inches, then stepped back quickly, positioning himself between the cage and Sam. Duke didn't move. His eyes darted between the open door and Sam, his body language screaming conflict. Freedom was right there, but so was fear. So was pain. So was the memory of whatever had broken him. Sam never stopped humming. The melody continued, soft and steady, a lifeline thrown across the space between them. Then, without warning, the boy did something that made both Rose and Marcus lunge forward. He reached his small hand through the gap in the door. "No!" Marcus shouted, but Sam's hand was already inside the cage, palm up, fingers relaxed. Duke could have bitten him. Should have, according to all the shelter's experience with him. Instead, the German Shepherd did something that defied every expectation. He whimpered. It was soft, almost inaudible, but it was there. A sound of such profound sadness that Rose felt tears spring to her eyes. Duke's massive frame began to shake, not with aggression, but with something that looked heartbreakingly like suppressed sobs. Slowly, so slowly that it seemed to take forever, the dog uncurled from his defensive position and took a single step forward. His nose stretched toward Sam's hand, nostrils flaring as he took in the boy's scent. Sam remained perfectly still humming the lullaby, his hand steady despite the fact that he was inches away from an animal that everyone had deemed dangerous. Duke's nose touched Sam's fingers. The contact lasted less than a second before Duke pulled back, but it was enough. Something had passed between them in that brief moment, an understanding that transcended words or logic. Duke took another step forward, then another, until he was at the cage door. He still trembled, still looked ready to bolt at any moment, but he was there. "Open it more," Sam said quietly. Marcus started to protest again, but Rose placed a hand on his arm. "Please," she said, "look at them." Marcus did look, and what he saw defied everything he knew about traumatized animals. Duke's eyes were locked on Sam's face with an intensity that spoke of recognition, though that should have been impossible. They'd never met before. The shelter had Duke's intake date clearly documented, but something in the way the dog looked at the boy suggested otherwise. Marcus opened the door wider. Duke emerged from the cage like a ghost materializing from shadow. His movements were slow, careful, each step seeming to cost him enormous effort, but he kept coming, drawn by Sam's continued humming, and the small hand that remained extended an invitation. When Duke was fully out of the cage, He did something that made Marcus grab his phone to record, knowing that no one would believe him otherwise. The German Shepherd, who had snapped at every hand that had tried to touch him, who had cowered from every attempt at kindness, walked directly to Sam and laid his massive head in the boy's lap. Sam's humming stopped. His small hands came to rest on Duke's head, fingers gently stroking the scarred fur. "It's okay," Sam whispered. "I'm sad too." Duke's body shuddered, and a sound escaped him that was unmistakably a sob. Not a whine or a whimper, but a deep, grieving sob that seemed to come from the very core of his being. Sam wrapped his arms around the dog's neck, and Duke pressed closer, as if trying to disappear into the embrace of this small child who somehow understood his pain. "We'll take him," Rose said, her voice thick with unshed tears. Marcus didn't even try to argue about the adoption protocols, the mandatory waiting period, or the behavioral assessments that Duke had failed. He simply nodded, wiping his own eyes with the back of his hand. "I'll get the paperwork." The drive home was quiet except for Sam's occasional whispered reassurances to Duke, who sat pressed against the boy in the back seat of Rose's old sedan. The dog's body remained tense, alert to every sound and movement outside the car, but he never moved away from Sam. It was as if he'd decided that this small boy was his anchor in a world that had become terrifying and unpredictable. Emma was standing on the porch when they pulled up to the modest two-story house on Elm Street. She'd gotten home from her night shift an hour ago, and the exhaustion was evident in the dark circles under her eyes and the way she leaned against the porch railing for support. But when she saw Sam helping a massive German Shepherd out of the car, her fatigue was replaced by alarm. "Mom, what is this?" Emma's voice was sharp with concern. "We talked about getting a dog, but this is not what we discussed." Sam looked up at his mother, and Emma's protest died in her throat. Her son was looking at her, really looking at her for the first time in months. His eyes were bright, alive in a way they hadn't been since the morning she'd had to tell him that Daddy wasn't coming home. "His name is Duke," Sam said clearly. "He's sad, like us." Emma's hand went to her chest, pressing against the place where her heart was suddenly beating too fast. Sam had spoken, not just words, but a complete thought, delivered without the hesitation and whispers that had become his only form of communication. "He was at the shelter," Rose explained quickly. "No one else would take him. He's been through trauma, but Sam..." "Emma, you should have seen them together. It was like they recognized each other." Duke stood beside Sam, his body language still screaming anxiety, but his position was protective, placing himself between the boy and any potential threat. His eyes moved constantly, scanning the yard, the street, the neighboring houses, as if expecting danger to materialize at any moment. "Is he safe?" Emma asked, though she was already moving down the porch steps, drawn by the change in her son. "He's scared," Sam said, his hand resting on Duke's head. "But he won't hurt us. He's protecting us." Emma knelt in front of them, her nurse's training letting her assess Duke's condition with practiced eyes. The scars, the malnourishment despite 3 weeks of shelter food, the way he flinched when a car door slammed down the street. This was an animal that had been through hell. "Where did he come from?" she asked Rose. "Found at a burned building." No one knows his history, but Marcus at the shelter thinks he might have been a service dog. The way he responds to certain things. Rose trailed off, watching as Duke's ears swiveled toward the sound of a siren in the distance, his body tensing further. Emma reached out slowly, telegraphing her movements. Duke watched her hand approach, but didn't pull away. When her fingers touched his fur, he trembled, but remained still. "Okay," she said finally, "we'll try. But if he shows any aggression..." "He won't," Sam interrupted, with such certainty that both women looked at him in surprise. "He's not mean. He's just remembering bad things." That first night, Emma insisted Duke sleep in the kitchen. They set up a bed made from old blankets in the corner, placed water and food bowls nearby, and installed a baby gate to keep him contained. Sam protested, but Emma held firm. They needed to be cautious, to take things slowly. But at 2 a.m, Emma woke to the sound of crying. Not Sam's crying, which she'd become accustomed to hearing through the walls. This was different, deeper, more primal. She grabbed her robe and hurried downstairs, afraid of what she might find. Duke was standing at the baby gate, his body rigid with tension. His eyes were fixed on the stairs, and the sound coming from him was unlike anything Emma had ever heard from a dog. It was pure distress, a keening that spoke of loss so profound it transcended the species. "What's wrong, boy?" Emma whispered, approaching slowly. Duke's response was to increase his vocalization, his front paws coming up to rest on the gate, as if he was trying to climb over it. Emma realized with a start that he was looking towards Sam's room. She removed the gate, and Duke shot past her, taking the stairs 3 at a time. Emma followed, her heart racing, to find the German Shepherd scratching frantically at Sam's door. She opened it, and Duke rushed in, going straight to the bed where Sam was thrashing in the grip of a nightmare. The dog jumped onto the bed with surprising gentleness for his size, curling his body around Sam's small form. He began licking the boy's face, whimpering softly, and Sam's thrashing stopped. His eyes opened, confused and tear-filled, and found Duke's face inches from his own. "Duke," Sam whispered, and the dog responded by pressing closer, his body a warm, solid presence against the terror of the nightmare. "He knew," Emma said from the doorway, her voice filled with wonder. "He knew Sam was having a nightmare." From that night forward, Duke slept in Sam's room. Emma didn't even try to argue. The dog had proven himself in a way that no behavioral assessment ever could. He was Sam's guardian, and Sam was his purpose. The next morning brought new mysteries. Duke led Sam to the attic, a place they rarely went since it was mostly filled with boxes of David's things that Emma hadn't been able to sort through yet. The dog stood at the bottom of the pull-down stairs, whining and pawing at the floor until Sam convinced Emma to let them go up. "What's up there, Duke?" Sam asked as they climbed the narrow stairs, Emma close behind with a flashlight. Duke went straight to a corner where old boxes were stacked, his nose working furiously. He began pawing at a particular box, his urgency palpable. Emma pulled it out and gasped when she saw what was written on the side in David's handwriting. "Daniel's things." "Who's Daniel?" Sam asked, looking up at his mother. Emma's face had gone pale. She sat down heavily on a dusty trunk, the flashlight beam wavering in her trembling hand. I don't know. Your father never mentioned anyone named Daniel, but Duke was insistent, pawing at the box until Emma opened it. Inside were firefighters' gear, but the name on the helmet wasn't David Matthews, it was D. Mitchell. There were photos too, old ones from what looked like a different fire station. And in every photo where the firefighter's face was visible, Emma found herself looking at someone who could have been David's twin. "Mommy, why does this man look like Daddy?" Sam asked, holding up one of the photos. Emma took the picture with shaking hands. The resemblance was uncanny, impossible to dismiss as coincidence. But David had told her he was an only child. His parents had died when he was young, raised by an elderly aunt who'd passed away just before they met. He'd said he had no family, that Emma and Sam were all he had in the world. Duke nosed at another item in the box, a collar with tags still attached. The name on the tags read Duke, along with a service number, and the words K9 Unit Station 19. Emma's mind raced. Station 19 was on the other side of the city, nowhere near where David had worked. "Duke," Sam said softly, and the dog's ears perked up. "This is your collar, isn't it?" The German Shepherd sniffed the collar, then let out a long, mournful howl that raised goosebumps on Emma's arms. It was the sound of recognition, of memory, of loss so deep it couldn't be expressed any other way. Rose appeared at the top of the attic stairs, having heard the howl from downstairs. "What's going on up here?" Emma showed her the photos, the gear, the collar. Rose's expression grew increasingly troubled as she examined each item. "Emma," she said slowly, "I think David might have had a brother. A twin brother. But he said—" "I know what he said," Rose interrupted gently. "But David was a private man about his past. Even I never pushed him on it. Maybe there was a reason he didn't talk about this Daniel." Duke had moved to sit beside Sam, but his eyes remained fixed on the firefighter gear. There was something in his posture, an alertness that suggested he was waiting for something, or someone. "We need to find out who Daniel Mitchell is," Emma said finally. "Or was." Rose pulled out her phone. "I have a friend who works at the city records office. Let me make a call." While Rose made her phone call, Emma and Sam continued going through the box. There were commendation letters, newspaper clippings about rescued victims, and at the very bottom, wrapped in plastic, was a DVD labeled simply, "For Sam, from Uncle D." Emma's hands shook as she held the disc. Sam, did Daddy ever mention an Uncle D? Sam shook his head, but Duke's reaction was immediate. He stood up, tail wagging for the first time since they'd brought him home, his eyes fixed on the DVD as if it held all the answers to questions they didn't even know to ask. They brought the DVD downstairs to the living room. Emma hesitated before putting it in the player. What if this revealed something about David that would tarnish Sam's memory of his father? What if there were secrets better left buried? But Duke was insistent, actually taking the DVD case gently in his mouth and carrying it to the TV stand. His meaning was clear. This needed to be seen. The screen flickered to life, and Emma gasped. It was David, or someone who looked exactly like David, sitting in what appeared to be a fire station break room. Duke immediately began whimpering, his tail wagging frantically as he pressed his nose against the TV screen. "Hey there, Sam," the man on the screen said, and his voice was similar to David's, but not quite the same. There was a rougher edge to it, a weariness that David's voice had never carried. "If you're watching this, it means something's happened to me, and somehow Duke found his way to you." "Good boy, Duke." At the sound of his name from the familiar voice, Duke barked once, sharp and clear. The man continued, "I know this must be confusing. Your dad and I, we had our differences, bad ones, the kind that brothers sometimes can't come back from. But I want you to know that I've been watching over you from afar. Every birthday, every Christmas, I was there in the shadows, making sure you were safe. Your dad didn't know. It was better that way." Emma reached for Sam's hand, squeezing it tightly as they watched. "Duke here," the man gestured off screen, and they could hear a bark in the recording. "He's been my partner for 3 years, the best K-9 officer Station 19 ever had. But more than that, he's family. If he's with you now, it's because he chose you. Duke doesn't trust easily, not after what we've been through together, but he knows family. He can sense it." The man leaned closer to the camera. "Sam, I don't know how old you are now when you're seeing this, but I want you to know that you have a whole other side of your family who loves you, even if we've never met. Duke will protect you. It's what he does. It's who he is. And maybe he can be the bridge that brings our families back together." The recording went on for another 10 minutes, Daniel explaining Duke's commands, his favorite toys, his fears and triggers. He talked about the warehouse fire that had separated them, how Duke had gone in after him when the ceiling collapsed, how the last thing he remembered was telling Duke to get out, to save himself. "If Duke survived and found you," Daniel said near the end, "then maybe I did too. Look for me, Sam. I might be closer than you think." The screen went dark, leaving them in stunned silence. Duke was now lying with his head in Sam's lap, occasional whimpers escaping him as if he was reliving memories triggered by his handler's voice. Rose returned from her phone call, her face grave. Daniel Mitchell was indeed a firefighter at Station 19. He was reported missing after a warehouse fire 13 months ago. Body never found. The fire was suspicious, possibly arson. But the investigation went cold. 13 months ago, Emma repeated slowly. That's just a month before David's accident. "What if it wasn't an accident?" Rose said quietly, voicing what they were all thinking. Duke suddenly stood, his body tense, ears swiveling toward the front window. A low growl rumbled in his chest, the first aggressive sound they'd heard from him. Sam stood too, his small hand going to Duke's collar. "Someone's watching us," Sam said, with a certainty that sent chills down Emma's spine. They moved cautiously to the window. Parked across the street was a van, dark-colored with tinted windows. It hadn't been there an hour ago. Duke's growl intensified, and he positioned himself between Sam and the window. "Maybe it's nothing," Emma said, but her voice lacked conviction. The van's engine started, and it pulled away slowly too. Slowly, as if the driver was taking time to observe the house. Duke tracked its movement until it disappeared around the corner, his body never relaxing. "We need to call the police," Rose said. "And tell them what?" Emma asked. "That we found out my dead husband had a secret twin brother who might not be dead, and now we're being watched? They'll think we're crazy." Duke moved away from the window and went to the front door, his nose working along the bottom edge. He whined, pawing at something. Emma opened the door carefully, Duke pushing past her to investigate the porch. There, tucked under the doormat, was an envelope with no name, no address. Emma picked it up with trembling fingers, Duke staying close as if ready to protect her from whatever threat the envelope might contain. Inside was a single piece of paper with a message typed in plain font. "Stop looking for Daniel Mitchell if you want to keep your family safe." Duke snatched the paper from Emma's hand before she could stop him, but instead of destroying it, he carried it to Sam, laying it at the boy's feet as if presenting evidence. "They're scared," Sam said, looking at the note. "Scared we'll find out the truth." "Sam, honey, this is dangerous," Emma started, but Sam interrupted her. "Duke knows something, don't you, boy? You know what really happened to Uncle Daniel. The German Shepherd barked once, sharp and affirmative. Then he did something unexpected. He went to David's old jacket hanging by the door, took it gently in his mouth, and carried it to the kitchen. They followed, watching as Duke went to a specific cabinet, pawing at it insistently. Emma opened the cabinet. It contained nothing unusual, just canned goods and boxes of pasta. But Duke continued pawing at the back panel until Emma removed everything and discovered that the panel was loose. Behind it was a hidden space containing a cell phone she'd never seen before and a small notebook. The phone was dead, but the notebook was filled with David's handwriting, page after page of notes about fires, patterns, suspicious connections, and repeatedly, one name, Victor Henley, Deputy Fire Chief. David was investigating something, Rose breathed, reading over Emma's shoulder. The last entry was dated just 2 days before David's death. Daniel was right. Henley's involved in the arsons. The warehouse fire was meant to kill Dan because he got too close. They think he's dead, but I know my brother. He's alive, hiding somewhere. I'm going to find him. If something happens to me, the evidence is with Duke. Dan trained him to hide things. Smart dog, loyal to the end. Emma's legs gave out, and she sank into a kitchen chair. Everything she thought she knew about David's death was unraveling. A car accident on a clear day, no other vehicles involved. Brake failure, they had said. Mechanical error, tragic but unavoidable. Duke came to her, resting his head on her knee, his brown eyes full of understanding. He knew. Somehow, this dog knew everything. Where Daniel was, what happened to David, who was responsible. But how could they get a dog to tell them what he knew? Sam knelt beside Duke, his small hands framing the dog's scarred face. "You'll show us, won't you? You'll help us find Uncle Daniel?" Duke licked Sam's face, then moved to the back door, scratching to be let out. They followed him to the backyard, where he went straight to a specific spot near the old oak tree and began digging with focused intensity. The ground was soft, recently disturbed, though Emma couldn't remember anyone doing yard work there. After a few minutes, Duke's paws hit something solid. Emma grabbed a garden spade and helped dig, revealing a waterproof container. Inside were USB drives, photographs, and documents, all sealed in plastic bags. The photographs showed various buildings before and after fires, with certain structural points circled in red ink. The documents were inspection reports, all signed by Victor Henley, all clearing buildings that later burned under suspicious circumstances. "This is it," Rose said, her voice hushed. "This is what David was gathering. Evidence of arson, insurance fraud, maybe even murder." A sound from the side of the house made them all freeze. Footsteps, trying to be quiet, but not quite succeeding. Duke's hackles rose, and he positioned himself in front of Sam, a low growl building in his throat. A figure appeared around the corner of the house, and Emma grabbed Sam, ready to run. But Duke's reaction was extraordinary. The growl cut off instantly, replaced by a sound that was part whine, part scream of joy. He launched himself forward, all 80 pounds of German Shepherd moving with desperate urgency. The man caught Duke mid-leap, staggering under the impact, but managing to keep his feet. His face was hidden by a baseball cap and thick beard, but when he looked up, Emma saw David's eyes looking back at her. No, not David's. Similar, but different. Older, more weathered, carrying pain that David's had never held. "Daniel?" she whispered. He nodded, his arms wrapped around Duke, who was beside himself with joy, licking every inch of his handler's face he could reach, his entire body wiggling with excitement. "I'm sorry," Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'm so sorry for everything. For David, for hiding, for putting you all in danger. But when I saw Duke with you, when I realized he'd found you." He buried his face in Duke's fur, and Emma could see his shoulders shaking. Sam approached slowly, his small hand reaching out. Uncle Daniel? Daniel looked at his nephew for the first time, and the resemblance to David was so strong that Emma felt her heart clench. Yeah, buddy. I'm your Uncle Daniel. Duke missed you, Sam said simply. He's been so sad. Daniel's composure broke completely then. He sank to his knees, Duke pressed against him, and Sam surprised everyone by walking over and wrapping his small arms around both man and dog. Daddy said, "You were gone," Sam whispered. But Duke knew better. Daniel pulled back enough to look at Sam's face. Your dad? David. He was trying to protect me, to finish what I started, the fires, the investigation. I got too close to the truth, and they tried to kill me. The warehouse fire was a trap. Duke saved me, pulled me out, but I was hurt bad. A homeless veteran found me, hid me, helped me heal. By the time I could move again, they'd declared me dead, and I realized being dead might be the only way to stay alive. But David figured it out, Emma said, the pieces falling into place. Daniel nodded. He was always the smart one. He found evidence I'd hidden, started putting pieces together. We met in secret a few times. He wanted to go to the FBI, but we needed more proof. Then, his voice broke. Then they killed him, made it look like an accident. Duke whined, pressing closer to Daniel as if trying to comfort him. I've been living in the shadows for over a year, Daniel continued, watching over you all from a distance, trying to gather enough evidence to bring Henley down. But I couldn't get to the final pieces. They were too well guarded. Then 3 weeks ago, there was another fire. The building where I'd been hiding. I barely got out, but Duke, I thought I'd lost him. I searched everywhere. The shelter found him, Rose said. He was in bad shape. He went looking for you, Daniel said to Sam. I'd shown him pictures of you, talked about you. David had given them to me during one of our secret meetings. Duke's smart, scary smart. When he couldn't find me, he must have decided to find the only other family he knew about. The sound of sirens in the distance made them all tense. Multiple sirens getting closer. Duke's ears swiveled, tracking the sound, and he moved to stand between his people and the potential threat. Did you call anyone? Emma asked Rose, who shook her head. Daniel's face went pale. They found me. They must have been watching the house, saw me come in. He stood quickly, Duke matching his movement. You need to get Sam out of here, now. But it was too late. The sirens were right outside, and through the gap in the fence, they could see police cars surrounding the house. But something was off. Emma, with her nurse's eye for detail, noticed it first. Those aren't regular police, she said. Look at the cars. They're all unmarked, but they're too new, too uniform. Daniel cursed under his breath. Henley's private security. He's got people everywhere, even in the department. What do we do? Rose asked, pulling Sam close. Duke answered by grabbing the container of evidence in his mouth and carrying it to Sam. He set it at the boy's feet, then moved to the back gate, pawing at it urgently. He wants us to run, Sam said, understanding immediately. No, Daniel said firmly. I'm done running, done hiding. He looked at Emma. Take Sam and Rose. Go out the back while Duke and I distract them. We're not splitting. Up, Emma said with a fierceness that surprised everyone, including herself. David died trying to protect this family. I won't let his sacrifice be for nothing. The front door of the house exploded inward with a crash that made them all jump. Duke immediately placed himself between the sound and Sam, his teeth bared in a snarl that would have terrified anyone who saw it. Daniel Mitchell, a voice called from inside the house. We know you're here. Come out quietly, and no one else needs to get hurt. Emma recognized the voice from David's funeral. Victor Henley himself, the man who'd stood at her husband's graveside and spoken about tragic accidents and the dangers firefighters face every day. Daniel and Emma exchanged looks. They were trapped, outgunned, with a child to protect. But they had something Henley didn't know about. Duke, a highly trained G9 officer whose loyalty and intelligence might be their only advantage. Duke, Daniel said quietly, using a tone of voice that immediately had the dog's full attention. Remember the warehouse? Remember what I taught you? Duke's ears perked up, his body language shifting from defensive to ready for action. Daniel pulled out his phone, typing quickly, then showed the screen to Duke. The dog studied it for a moment, then gave a soft woof of understanding. What are you doing? Emma whispered. Duke knows every fire station in the city, Daniel explained quietly, including where the real cops are right now versus Henley's fake ones. I just told him to get help, but Duke didn't move toward the gate. Instead, he gently took Sam's hand in his mouth, not biting, just holding, and began leading the boy toward a section of fence that looked solid, but Duke knew better. He'd been exploring this yard for days, finding every weakness, every escape route, just as he'd been trained. Go with Duke, Daniel told Sam. He'll keep you safe. Sam looked up at his uncle, then at his mother, his young face set with determination that seemed beyond his years. Duke says we all go together, or no one goes. Duke says? Emma started to ask, but there wasn't time. The back door burst open, and men in tactical gear poured into the yard. Duke released Sam's hand and launched himself at the nearest intruder with a ferocity that spoke of years of training. He didn't go for the kill, but for the weapon hand, his powerful jaws clamping down and forcing the man to drop his gun. Duke, no! Daniel shouted, but the German Shepherd was already moving to the next target, using his body as a battering ram to knock another man off balance. In the chaos, Sam did something that stunned everyone. He grabbed the container of evidence and ran, not away from danger, but toward the house, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Help! Help! Bad men are hurting my dog!" His child's voice carried clearly to the street where real neighbors were gathering, drawn by the commotion. Several were already filming with their phones, broadcasting, lived to social media. The police operation was suddenly very public. Henley himself appeared in the doorway, his face twisted with rage. "Get that kid!" But Duke was there first, placing himself between Henley and Sam with a snarl that promised violence if the man took one step closer. Blood dripped from a wound on Duke's shoulder, where a bullet had grazed him, but he stood firm, immovable. "Duke's hurt!" Sam cried, and his genuine distress was captured by every phone camera now pointed at the scene. Emma ran to her son, scooping him up, while Daniel moved to flank Duke, ready to defend his family. Rose, showing surprising courage for her age, was loudly narrating to the growing crowd. "These men broke into our home. They're attacking us. Someone call the real police." Henley realized his operation was falling apart. Too many witnesses, too much attention. He raised his hand to signal retreat, but Duke had other plans. The German Shepherd lunged forward, not at Henley, but at his jacket pocket, tearing it open with surgical precision. A USB drive fell to the ground, one that looked identical to those in David's evidence container. "That's mine!" Henley snarled, reaching for it, but Duke was faster, snatching it up and delivering it to Sam with the same gentle mouth he'd used to carry his toys. The real sirens were approaching now, different from before, the authentic sound of actual law enforcement responding to multiple 911 calls from concerned neighbors. Henley's men were already retreating, melting away into unmarked vehicles, leaving their leader exposed. "This isn't over," Henley said, his eyes fixed on Daniel with pure hatred. "You're a dead man, officially dead. No one will believe you." "Maybe not," Daniel said, standing tall despite his year of hiding and hardship. "But they'll believe Duke." As if understanding his cue, Duke sat at perfect attention, his training evident in every line of his body. Despite his injury, despite the trauma of the past year, he was every inch the decorated K-9 officer he'd once been. The crowd of neighbors, still filming, saw not a dangerous dog, but a hero protecting a child. The real police arrived in force, uniforms Emma recognized, including Officer James from their neighborhood patrol. He took one look at the scene, the injured dog, the terrified child, the evidence container Sam was clutching, and Henley standing there with his torn jacket and guilty expression, and immediately called for backup and paramedics. "Mr. Henley," Officer James said carefully, "I'm going to need you to come with us for questioning." "You can't arrest me," Henley blustered. "I'm the deputy fire chief. I was conducting an investigation." "Into what?" Emma interrupted, her voice carrying clearly. "My husband's death? The warehouse fire that supposedly killed Daniel? Or the pattern of arsons you've been covering up for years?" The crowd murmured, phones still recording, the story already spreading across social media, faster than Henley could hope to contain it. Duke chose that moment to deliver his final blow. He walked over to where David's jacket still lay from earlier, nosed it aside, and revealed another hidden panel in the porch floor that no one had noticed. Inside was a small camera, its red recording light still blinking. Daniel smiled grimly. David installed that the week before he died. Motion activated, uploads directly to cloud storage. It's been recording everything, including your confession just now, about making sure I stayed dead. Henley's face went white. He turned to run, but Duke was there, not attacking, just standing in his path, forcing him to stop. The German Shepherd's message was clear. No more running, no more hiding. The truth would come out. As the police took Henley away and paramedics tended to Duke's wound, Sam refused to let go of his dog. "You saved us," he whispered into Duke's fur, "just like Daddy knew you would." Duke licked Sam's face, his tail wagging despite his injury. He'd completed his mission, the one David had given him without words, the one Daniel had trained him for without knowing it would matter so much. He'd protected the family, brought the truth to light, and found his way home. The paramedics worked on Duke's shoulder while Sam held his head, whispering promises that everything would be okay. The German Shepherd's eyes never left the boy's face, even as the medical team cleaned and bandaged his wound. The crowd of neighbors had grown larger, and the story was already trending on social media with hashtags like #HeroDog and #JusticeForDavid. Daniel stood apart from the group, his shoulders tense as he watched the police process the scene. After a year of hiding, being visible felt dangerous, wrong. But when Duke whined softly, calling to him, he moved closer to his partner, his family. "You'll need to come to the station," Officer James said gently to Daniel. "Not as a suspect, but we need your statement. Everything you know about the fires, about Henley, about what happened to your brother." Emma stepped forward, Sam still in her arms. "He's coming home with us first. He needs food, clean clothes, and medical attention. You can talk to him tomorrow." The officer looked like he might argue, but something in Emma's expression stopped him. Maybe it was the fierce protectiveness of a woman who'd already lost too much, or maybe it was the way Duke positioned himself between Daniel and the officer, making his allegiance clear. "Tomorrow morning," Officer James agreed, 9 o'clock sharp. As the crowd began to disperse and the emergency vehicles pulled away, the small family stood in their backyard, surrounded by the evidence of how dramatically their lives had changed in just a few hours. Duke, despite his injury, insisted on doing a patrol of the perimeter, checking each corner of the yard before returning to Sam's side. "He's making sure it's safe," Daniel explained, watching his partner work. "He won't rest until he's confirmed there are no threats." Rose, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the chaos, finally spoke. "You can't stay here tonight. None of us can. If Henley has people in the department, if there are others involved in this conspiracy..." She was right. The house that had been their sanctuary now felt exposed, vulnerable. Duke seemed to agree, his behavior increasingly agitated as the sun began to set. He kept returning to the front window, his body tense, watching the street. "I know a place," Daniel said quietly. "A cabin about an hour north. It belongs to a friend from the service, someone I trust completely. We could go there tonight, figure out our next steps." Emma hesitated. Taking Sam away from the only home he'd known since David's death felt like another loss. But Duke made the decision for them. He went to Sam's room and began bringing down items. The boy's favorite blanket, his stuffed elephant, the photo of David from the nightstand. The German Shepherd was packing for them, choosing the things he knew Sam would need. "How does he know?" Emma asked, watching Duke carefully carry each item to the front door. "Duke's not just trained," Daniel explained. "He's different. The military was experimenting with enhanced training programs, using dogs with exceptional intelligence. Duke was their star pupil. He understands more than most people would believe." Sam, who had been quietly watching Duke work, suddenly spoke up. "He shows me things in my dreams." Everyone turned to look at the boy. Sam's face was serious, matter of fact, as if he'd said something completely normal. "What kind of things, honey?" Emma asked carefully. "The night before we found him at the shelter, I dreamed about a dog who was sad and scared. He showed me his memories, fire, loud noises, someone he loved going away. When I saw Duke in that cage, I knew he was the dog from my dream." Daniel and Emma exchanged glances over Sam's head. Children had vivid imaginations, but the timing was unsettling. Duke paused in his packing to nuzzle Sam's hand, a gesture that seemed to confirm the boy's words. They loaded what they could into Emma's car and Daniel's hidden truck, which he'd retrieved from a storage unit nearby. Duke insisted on riding with Sam, despite Daniel's obvious desire to have his partner close after their long separation. The German Shepherd had clearly expanded his definition of who needed protecting. The drive to the cabin was tense. Every set of headlights in the rearview mirror could be a threat. Every dark van a potential danger. Duke remained alert the entire journey, his head swiveling between watching Sam and monitoring the vehicles around them. Twice he growled at specific cars, and both times Daniel changed their route, trusting the dog's instincts. The cabin was small but well-maintained, hidden at the end of a dirt road that wound through dense forest. As soon as they arrived, Duke did a thorough inspection, checking every room, every corner, before finally relaxing enough to accept some water and food. "He's exhausted," Daniel observed, watching Duke fight to keep his eyes open, even as he maintained his position by Sam's side. But he won't rest until he believes everyone is safe. Emma was examining Duke's bandage, her nurse's training taking over. "The wound is clean, but he needs antibiotics. And probably pain medication, though he's hiding it well. There's a veterinary clinic in town," Daniel said. "Dr. Patricia Chen. She's treated Duke before, off the books. She can be trusted." "How many people have been helping you hide?" Rose asked, settling into an old armchair with a cup of tea Daniel had made. "More than you'd think," Daniel replied. Once people learned what Henley was doing, what he'd done, David wasn't his only victim. There were others. Firefighters who asked too many questions, building inspectors who wouldn't sign off on his reports. The warehouse fire that was supposed to kill me? 2 other people died in that fire, good people who were just doing their jobs. Duke suddenly lifted his head, ears perked. A moment later, they heard the sound of a vehicle approaching. Daniel moved quickly to the window, but Duke's tail began wagging, his body language relaxed. "It's okay," Daniel said, recognizing the car. "It's Dr. Chen. I called her while you were packing." Dr. Patricia. Chen was a small woman with kind eyes and gentle hands that immediately put Duke at ease. She examined his wound carefully, while Sam held his head, whispering encouragement. "You're lucky," she told them. "The bullet just grazed him. No major damage, though he'll be sore for a few days." She administered antibiotics and pain medication, then turned her attention to the humans. "Daniel, I heard about what happened today. It's all over the news." "The news?" Emma reached for her phone, which she'd turned off during their escape. The story had exploded. Videos from the neighbors had gone viral. The image of Duke standing between Sam and armed men was everywhere, shared thousands of times with captions about bravery and loyalty. Someone had even found old news footage of Duke receiving a commendation for his service, connecting him to the hero dog protecting the child. "This is good, Doctor," Chen said. "The more public attention, the harder it will be for anyone to hurt you. You're not just witnesses now. You're symbols. The public loves Duke. They love Sam. Anyone who tries to harm you now would face massive backlash." Duke seemed to understand the conversation. He moved to Sam, resting his head on the boy's lap with a soft sigh. The pain medication was starting to work, making him drowsy, but he fought against it, determined to stay alert. "Sleep, Duke," Sam said softly, stroking the dog's ears. "I'll watch over you now." It was a reversal of their usual roles, but Duke seemed to accept it. His eyes slowly closed, though his body remained positioned to protect. Sam, even in sleep, that night as everyone tried to rest, Sam had another dream. But this time, it wasn't Duke showing him things. It was his father. David stood in a place filled with soft light, looking exactly as Sam remembered him, but somehow more at peace. Duke was there too, but younger, unscarred, playing with another dog Sam didn't recognize. "Daddy," Sam whispered in his dream. David smiled, kneeling down to Sam's level. "Hey, buddy. I'm so proud of you. You're taking care of everyone, just like I knew you would." "I miss you," Sam said, dream tears streaming down his face. "I know. I miss you too. But you're not alone. You have Mom, Grandma Rose, Uncle Daniel now, and Duke. Duke is special, Sam. He's my gift to you. He'll protect you, teach you, help you grow strong." "Why didn't you tell us about Uncle Daniel?" David's expression grew sad. "I was trying to protect everyone. Daniel and I, we discovered something terrible, and I thought keeping you separate would keep you safe. I was wrong. Families should be together, especially when things are dangerous. The other dog in the dream approached Sam, and he could see now that it looked like Duke but different, smaller, with different markings. "That's Duchess," David explained. "Duke's sister. She's out there somewhere, Sam. When the time is right, Duke will find her. She has the other half of what we need to stop all of this for good. Other half? Duke carries evidence, but Duchess has the key to decode it. Daniel knows where she might be. Trust him. Trust Duke. They'll keep you safe." The dream began to fade, but David had one more thing to say. "Tell your mom I love her. Tell her the insurance papers are in the blue folder, and tell her it's okay to be happy again. She deserves happiness." Sam woke to find Duke watching him, the dog's eyes alert despite the pain medication. The German Shepherd whined softly, pressing his nose to Sam's cheek, as if checking that he was okay. "I saw Daddy," Sam whispered. "He said you have a sister." Duke's reaction was immediate and dramatic. He sat up fully, his entire body quivering with excitement. A sound escaped him that was part whine, part howl, full of longing and hope. The noise woke everyone. Daniel came running from the other room, followed by Emma and Rose. "What's wrong?" Emma asked, immediately checking Sam for any signs of distress. "Duke has a sister," Sam announced. "Her name is Duchess. Daddy told me in my dream." Daniel's face went white. He sat down heavily on the edge of Sam's bed, his hands shaking slightly. "How could you know that?" "I never told anyone about Duchess." "She's real?" Emma asked. Daniel nodded slowly. "Duke and Duchess were trained together. They were inseparable. But when I got Duke, Duchess went to another handler in a different unit. Last I heard—" He paused, swallowing hard. "Last I heard, she was with a handler named Martinez who was investigating a series of suspicious fires in Chicago." "The same kind of fires?" Rose asked, though they all knew the answer. "The same kind. Martinez went missing 6 months ago. Duchess was never found." Duke was now pacing the room, his injury forgotten in his agitation. He went to Daniel, pawing at his pocket where his phone was kept, then to the door, then back to Sam. "He wants us to find her," Sam said with certainty. "She's alive. He knows she's alive." Emma wanted to dismiss this as childhood fantasy mixed with trauma and coincidence. But too much had happened. Too many impossible things had proven true. Duke had found them against all odds. He'd known about the evidence hidden in their house. He'd recognized danger before it appeared. If Sam said Duke knew his sister was alive, who were they to doubt it? "I made some calls earlier," Daniel said slowly. "Before all this happened, when I was trying to piece together the larger conspiracy. The fires aren't just here. They're in multiple cities, Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, all with the same pattern, all with fire officials who have connections to a company called Phoenix Development." "Phoenix," Emma repeated, "rising from the ashes. They're burning buildings to buy the land cheap for redevelopment. That's the theory? But proving it requires evidence from multiple sources. If Duchess really is alive, if she has what Martinez found—" Duke barked once, sharp and clear. He went to Daniel's backpack and began nosing through it until he found a tablet. He carried it carefully to Daniel, then sat at perfect attention, every line of his body communicating urgency. Daniel pulled up a map on the tablet. "Okay, Duke. Where do we start? What happened next would have seemed impossible if they hadn't all witnessed it." Duke studied the map, then placed his paw on a specific location, Chicago, but not the city itself, a suburb called Riverside. "That's where Martinez lived," Daniel breathed. "His family had a house there." Duke's tail wagged, and he touched the screen again, this time on a park near the house. "You think Duchess is there?" "At a park?" Emma asked. Duke whined, pawing at the screen more insistently. Sam leaned over to look, his small finger tracing the area Duke indicated. "Not the park," Sam said suddenly. "Under it. Look, there's a bridge here, like the bridge where we found Duke." Everyone crowded around to see. There was indeed a bridge marked on the map, crossing what appeared to be a small river or creek that ran through the park. "If Duchess was trained like Duke," Daniel said slowly, "she would go somewhere that felt safe but hidden. Bridges provide shelter, water access, multiple escape routes." Duke was practically vibrating with excitement now. He grabbed his leash from where it hung by the door and brought it to Daniel, his message clear. They needed to go now. "It's the middle of the night," Emma protested, "and Chicago is 5 hours away. But even as she spoke, she knew they would go. The look in Duke's eyes, the desperate hope, mixed with certainty, was impossible to ignore. And if there was even a chance that Duchess was alive, that she had information that could expose the entire conspiracy and bring justice for David and all the others, they had to try. They prepared quickly but carefully. Daniel made calls to contacts he still trusted, arranging safe houses along the route in case they needed them. Emma packed medical supplies for both humans and dogs. Rose, practical as always, prepared food and water for the journey. Sam refused to be left behind, and Duke made it clear he wouldn't go without the boy. They were a bonded pair now, inseparable. The German Shepherd had claimed Sam as his person, and no amount of logic about danger would change that. As they loaded into Daniel's truck just before dawn, Duke took his position in the back seat with Sam, but his body was oriented toward the north, toward Chicago, toward hope. The boy's small hand rested on the dog's back, and both of them stared out the window as the first light of dawn painted the sky. The drive was long, but strangely peaceful. Duke remained calm but alert, occasionally whining when they passed certain exits or saw specific vehicles, guiding their route with an intelligence that continued to amaze them. Sam dozed against the dog's warm body, and even in sleep, his hand maintained contact with Duke's fur. "Tell me about Duchess," Emma said to Daniel as they crossed into Illinois. "She's smaller than Duke, faster, more agile. Where Duke is power and protection, Duchess is speed and stealth. Together, they were unstoppable. We used to joke that they could read each other's minds, the way they coordinated during training exercises." "Why were they separated?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Politics. The program was experimental, expensive. Some general decided it would be better to spread the assets across multiple units instead of keeping them together. Duke never got over it. For weeks after Duchess left, he would sit by the gate of the training facility waiting for her to come back. Duke whined softly at the mention of his sister's name, his tail drooping slightly. "We'll find her," Sam said confidently, having woken from his nap. "Duke knows she's waiting for us." They reached Riverside just after noon. The park Duke had indicated was larger than it appeared on the map, with dense woods surrounding a winding creek. The bridge was old, made of stone and concrete, carrying a rarely used access road over the water. Duke was out of the truck before Daniel had fully stopped, his nose to the ground, working in expanding circles from their parking spot. His injury seemed forgotten as he moved with purpose and determination. Then suddenly, he froze, his entire body going rigid. A howl erupted from him, long and mournful, echoing across the park. An answering howl came from the direction of the bridge. Duke took off running, ignoring Daniel's shouts to wait. Sam broke free from Emma's grip and followed, his small legs pumping as he tried to keep up with the German Shepherd. The adults had no choice but to chase after them. They found Duke at the base of the bridge, standing perfectly still. Across from him, emerging from the shadows beneath the structure, was another German Shepherd, smaller than Duke, with a lighter coat and distinctive white markings on her chest and paws. Duchess. But she wasn't alone. A small figure huddled behind her, a child, no more than 7 or 8 years old, dirty and thin, but with eyes that blazed with protective fury. "Stay back!" the child shouted, one arm wrapped around Duchess's neck. "She's mine! You can't take her!" Duke didn't move, didn't approach. He simply lay down, making himself non-threatening, and began to whine softly. Duchess responded with her own whine, clearly wanting to go to her brother, but unwilling to leave the child. Sam approached slowly, his hands visible and empty. "It's okay," he said to the other child. "Duke is her brother. They've been looking for each other." "Duke?" The child's voice cracked slightly. "The Duke? From the stories?" "What stories?" Daniel asked gently, keeping his distance. The child studied them all suspiciously before answering. "Duchess dreams about him, shows me pictures in my head when we sleep. A big dog who looks like her, playing and training. She cries for him at night." Emma and Daniel exchanged glances, another child claiming to receive images from a dog. It couldn't be coincidence. "What's your name?" Sam asked, taking another small step forward. "Alex," the child replied. "Alexandra Martinez, but everyone calls me Alex." Daniel's intake of breath was audible. "Martinez. Your father was Officer Robert Martinez?" Alex's grip on Duchess tightened. You knew my dad? I knew of him. He was a good cop, investigating bad people. The same bad people who hurt my brother. They killed him, Alex said flatly. Made it look like an accident. But Duchess knew better. She saved me from the fire they set at our house. We've been hiding ever since. How long? Emma asked, her nurse's instincts taking in the child's malnourished state. 6 months, maybe more. I lost count. 6 months. A 7-year-old child had been living under a bridge with only a dog for companionship and protection for 6 months. Emma's heart broke. Duke slowly belly crawled toward Duchess, whining continuously. His sister watched him approach, her body trembling with the effort of staying in place when every instinct screamed at her to run to him. It's okay, Duchess, Alex finally whispered. You can go to him. The reunion was explosive. The two dogs collided in the middle, rolling and tumbling in a display of joy that brought tears to everyone's eyes. They licked each other's faces, whined and yipped, their bodies wiggling with an excitement that seemed to make them puppies again. Duke forgot all about his injury, and Duchess forgot her protective stance, both of them lost in the euphoria of being together again. Sam approached Alex carefully. You've been taking care of Duchess all by yourself? Alex nodded, chin lifted with pride despite the tears tracking through the dirt on her face. She takes care of me too. We take care of each other. You don't have to do it alone anymore, Sam said, holding out his hand. We're family now. Duke and Duchess are family, so we are too. Alex looked at the offered hand, then at the adults, then at Duchess, who had paused in her reunion to look back at her young guardian. The female German shepherd walked over to Alex, gently took her sleeve in her mouth, and tugged her toward the group. Duchess says it's okay, Alex said, taking Sam's hand. Daniel knelt down to Alex's level. Your father was investigating the fires. Did he leave anything with you? Any papers or computer files? Alex's eyes went wide with fear. How did you know? Because my brother was doing the same thing. They were both killed for it. But if we can get the evidence they gathered, we can stop the people responsible. Alex looked at Duchess, who barked once and ran back under the bridge. She emerged carrying a waterproof bag in her mouth, which she deposited at Alex's feet. Dad said if anything happened to him, I should give this to someone I could trust, Alex said. But I didn't know who to trust. Everyone who came looking for us felt wrong. Duchess would growl and we'd run. But not us? Emma asked. Alex shook her head. Duchess is happy. She's never happy anymore, but she's happy now. They opened the bag carefully. Inside were USB drives, documents, and a tablet computer, all sealed in plastic. Daniel powered on the tablet, and his face paled as he read. This is it, he breathed. Martinez mapped the entire network. Phoenix Development is just the front. There are city officials in 12 major cities involved. Fire chiefs, building inspectors, even some police commissioners. They've been running this for years. Duke and Duchess sat side by side, watching their humans with intelligent eyes. Duke's tail thumped once against the ground, as if to say, finally. We need to get somewhere safe, Daniel said. With both sets of evidence, we have enough to take this to the FBI, the media, everyone. But once they know we have this, he didn't need to finish. They all understood the danger. A sound made them all freeze. Vehicles, multiple ones, approaching fast. Duke and Duchess both growled, their hackles rising as they positioned themselves in front of the children. They found us, Emma whispered. The bridge, Alex said quickly. There's a maintenance tunnel that connects to the storm drains. Duchess and I use it when people come looking. It comes out by the river about a quarter mile away. Without hesitation, they followed Alex and Duchess under the bridge. The maintenance tunnel was small, barely big enough for the adults to crawl through. But the children and dogs moved quickly. Behind them, they could hear car doors, slamming, voices shouting. The tunnel was dark and damp, with only the light from Daniel's phone to guide them. Duchess led the way, her knowledge of the passage evident in how confidently she moved. Duke brought up the rear, occasionally growling at sounds behind them. They emerged from a drainage grate near the river, muddy and exhausted but safe for the moment. Daniel's truck was visible in the distance, but so were the dark SUVs surrounding it. We can't go back, Rose said, stating the obvious. My dad had a boat, Alex said suddenly, hidden in the reeds about a mile downriver. He said it was our emergency escape plan, but we never got to use it. They had no other choice. Following the river, staying in the tree line, they made their way to where Alex indicated. The boat was there, old but functional, with a small outboard motor that Daniel managed to start after several tries. As they pulled away from the shore, they could see figures appearing where they'd emerged from the tunnel, but it was too late. They were already mid-river, the current helping carry them away from danger. Duke and Duchess sat at the front of the boat like twin figureheads, their noses pointed forward, alert to any danger. Sam and Alex huddled together in the middle, two children who had lost their fathers to the same conspiracy, now united in their determination to see justice done. "Where do we go?" Emma asked. Daniel was on his phone, making calls with his free hand while steering with the other. "I have a contact at the FBI, someone I trust absolutely. She's been investigating Phoenix development independently. With what we have now, she can move immediately." "Will they believe us?" Rose asked. Duke barked once, drawing their attention. He had moved to sit beside the bag of evidence, one paw resting protectively on it. The message was clear, the evidence would speak for itself. The boat carried them downriver as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. It felt like an ending, but also a beginning. Two dogs reunited, two children who had found each other through loss, and a family expanded by tragedy, but strengthened by love and determination. Alex had fallen asleep against Sam's shoulder, exhausted by months of survival. Sam stayed awake, one hand on Duke, the other protectively around his new friend. "She doesn't have anyone else," Sam said quietly to his mother. "I know," Emma replied, understanding what he was asking without him having to say it. "We'll figure it out. We don't leave family behind." Duke and Duchess both looked back at her, their tails wagging slightly as if in approval. Daniel's phone rang, and he answered quickly. His face went through several expressions as he listened, finally settling on grim satisfaction. "That was my FBI contact," he said when he hung up. Henley broke. Faced with the evidence we already had, he's turning state's witness. He's giving them everything. Names, dates, amounts. The whole network is coming down. "So it's over?" Emma asked. "The conspiracy is. But there's still the matter of custody for Alex, medical care for the dogs, rebuilding our lives." "We'll handle it," Rose said firmly. "One step at a time. We've come this far." The boat rounded a bend, and they could see lights ahead. A small marina with a dock. Daniel's FBI contact had arranged for them to be met there, to be taken somewhere safe while the arrests were made. As they approached the dock, Duke and Duchess stood up, alert but not alarmed. Whatever waited for them there, they would face it together. "Look," Sam said suddenly, pointing at the sky. A shooting star streaked across the darkening heavens, bright and brief, but beautiful. "Make a wish," Alex said sleepily, having woken up. Sam closed his eyes tight. "I wish for us all to stay together." "That's not how wishes work," Alex informed him seriously. "You're not supposed to tell anyone. But if I don't tell, how will it come true?" It was a child's logic, but somehow it felt right. After all they'd been through, secrets had only brought pain. Truth, however difficult, had brought them together. The boat touched the dock, and a woman in an FBI jacket stepped forward. She looked at the ragged group, 2 muddy children, 3 exhausted adults, and 2 German shepherds who watched her with intelligent, assessing eyes. "Agent Sarah Coleman," she introduced herself. "Daniel, I presume?" Daniel nodded, helping everyone out of the boat. Duke and Duchess flanked the children, their protective stance clear. "These are the dogs?" Agent Coleman asked, her voice carrying a note of awe. "The ones from the experimental program?" "Duke and Duchess," Daniel confirmed. "And yes, they're everything the reports claimed and more." Agent Coleman knelt down, letting the dogs approach her. Duke sniffed her hand carefully, then looked back at Sam as if asking for permission. Sam nodded, and Duke allowed the agent to pet him briefly. "We have a safe house prepared," Agent Coleman said. "Medical attention for everyone, including the dogs. And tomorrow, we start taking official statements. With what you've provided, we're conducting simultaneous raids in 12 cities tonight." "What about Alex?" Emma asked, her arm around the girl's shoulders. Agent Coleman's expression softened. "We'll contact Child Services." "No," Sam interrupted, his voice carrying surprising authority for a 5-year-old. "Alex stays with us. Duchess won't leave her, And Duke won't leave Duchess, and I won't leave Duke. It was a chain of loyalty that couldn't be broken without destroying everything they'd built. Agent Coleman looked at Emma, who nodded firmly. We'll take temporary custody while the legal matters are sorted out. She's been through enough. She needs stability, family. I'll make the arrangements, Agent Coleman agreed. As they loaded into the waiting vehicles, Duke and Duchess insisted on staying together, both of them piling into the same SUV with Sam and Alex. The two children sat between the two dogs, small hands buried in fur, a picture of resilience and hope. The safe house was a modest suburban home, unremarkable from the outside, but secure and comfortable inside. There was hot food waiting, clean clothes, and most importantly, a veterinarian to properly examine both dogs. Duke's wound was healing well, though he'd have a scar to add to his collection. Duchess was malnourished, but otherwise healthy, her time protecting Alex having taken a toll, but not broken her spirit. Both dogs submitted to the examination with patience, seeming to understand it was necessary. That night, they all gathered in the living room, too wired to sleep despite their exhaustion. The television was on, showing breaking news of arrests across the country. Phoenix Development's offices were being raided. Fire officials were being led away in handcuffs. The conspiracy that had cost so many lives was finally being exposed. Your father would be proud, Rose told Emma, squeezing her hand. Both our fathers, Alex added quietly, looking at Sam. Duke and Duchess lay between the children, their bodies touching, drawing comfort from their reunion. Occasionally, one would nuzzle the other, as if confirming they were really together again. Daniel sat apart slightly, his phone in his hand. He'd been reinstated posthumously and then officially resurrected in the system, but returning from the dead bureaucratically was complicated. What will you do now? Emma asked him. I don't know, he admitted. For so long, everything was about survival, about getting justice for David. Now that it's happening, Duke got up and walked over to Daniel, resting his head on his former handler's knee. The message was clear. Wherever Daniel went, Duke would want to visit. But the German Shepherd then returned to Sam, making his choice equally clear. You could stay, Emma suggested. Sam needs male figures in his life. And you're his uncle, his connection to David. Plus, Duchess likes you, Alex added with the straightforward honesty of children. Daniel smiled, the expression transforming his face. I'd like that. The next days were a whirlwind of statements, paperwork, and media attention. The story of the two German shepherds who had helped expose a nationwide conspiracy captured the public imagination. Duke and Duchess became symbols of loyalty and justice. Sam and Alex, the children who had bonded with them, became symbols of resilience and hope. But through it all, the dogs remained focused on what mattered most to them, their people. Duke shadowed Sam everywhere, still recovering from his injury, but refusing to rest if Sam was awake. Duchess did the same with Alex, the two of them having developed an almost telepathic understanding during their months of survival. The legal proceedings moved with surprising speed. With Henley's testimony and the mountain of evidence provided by both David and Martinez's, investigations, convictions came quickly. Phoenix Development was disbanded, its assets seized to provide compensation to the victims' families. Alex's custody was more complicated, but Emma navigated it with the same determination she'd shown throughout their ordeal. Within a month, she had temporary guardianship, with the strong possibility of adoption if Alex agreed. Do you want to stay with us? Emma asked Alex one evening as they all sat around the dinner table. Alex looked at Duchess, who was lying beside Duke, both dogs contentedly gnawing on bones. Then she looked at Sam, who was watching her hopefully. Duchess wants to stay with Duke, Alex said carefully. And I want to stay with Duchess. But do you want to stay with us? Emma pressed gently. Alex was quiet for a moment, then nodded. My dad would want me to be safe and happy. I'm both of those things here. The adoption process would take months, but the family was already forming. 2 children brought together by tragedy, 2 dogs reunited after forced separation, and 3 adults determined to protect and nurture them all. Daniel found work at a local fire station, his skills and experience making him valuable despite his time away. He moved into a small apartment nearby, close enough to be a constant presence in Sam's life, but maintaining some independence. The nightmares came less frequently as time passed. When they did come, Duke was always there for Sam and Duchess for Alex. The dogs seemed to take shifts, one always alert, while the other rested, maintaining constant vigilance over their charges. One evening, about 3 months after their reunion, something remarkable happened. Sam and Alex were playing in the backyard while the adults watched from the porch. Duke and Duchess were engaged in what looked like a complex game, running patterns around the yard that seemed random but had an underlying structure. They're running training exercises, Daniel realized, patterns they learned in the program. As they watched, the dogs began to include the children in their patterns, gently herding them through movements that were part game, part training. Sam and Alex laughed, thinking it was just play, but the adults could see the purpose behind it. "They're teaching them," Emma said in wonder, "teaching them to be aware, to work together." Duke and Duchess had found a new mission, preparing the next generation, not for war or police work, but for life. They were passing on their skills in the only way they knew how, through play and patience and unconditional love. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, the family gathered on the porch. Duke and Duchess lay at the children's feet, alert but content. The German shepherds who had been separated by human ambition and reunited by human compassion had found their purpose not in the violence they'd been trained for, but in the love they chose to give. "Tell us the story again," Sam requested as he did. "Most nights?" "Which one?" Emma asked, though she knew. "The one about how Duke saved us all." Emma began the story they all knew by heart now, but with each telling, it became less about the danger they'd faced and more about the connections they'd forged. Duke and Duchess listened with their heads tilted, as if they too enjoyed hearing their story told. "Duke was pushed away by everyone," Emma began, using the words that had become ritual. "He was scared and alone, and no one wanted him because they couldn't see past his pain to his heart." "But Sam saw," Alex continued, having claimed her part of the telling. "Sam saw that Duke wasn't mean, just sad. And Duke saw that Sam was sad too," Sam added. "So they decided to be sad together until they could be happy again. And then Duke found me and Duchess," Alex continued, "and we all found each other. And the bad people were stopped," Sam added. "And justice was served," Emma continued. "And we became a family," Rose concluded, the ending that mattered most. Duke's tail thumped against the porch boards in approval. Duchess stretched and yawned, then rested her head on Alex's foot. The story was true, every word of it, but it was also more than that. It was their origin story, the tale of how broken pieces came together to form something stronger than what had been before. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Sam asked the question he'd been holding back all day. "Do you think Daddy and Alex's dad can see us? Do you think they know we're okay?" Emma pulled him close, feeling Alex lean into her other side. "I think they know, and I think they're proud of how brave you've both been." Duke suddenly stood, his attention fixed on something in the yard. Duchess joined him, both dogs alert but not alarmed. Then, in perfect synchronization, they both howled, not the mournful sound of loss, but something triumphant, celebratory. "They're saying thank you," Sam said, with the certainty that only children possess. "Thank you to our dads for sending them to us." Whether it was true or simply the interpretation of a child's heart, it felt right. The howl echoed across the neighborhood, and somewhere in the distance another dog answered, then another, until it seemed the whole world was joining in their song of survival, justice, and love. When the howling ended, Duke and Duchess returned to their positions, but something had changed. The weight they'd both carried, the trauma of separation and loss, seemed lighter. They had completed their mission, not the one they'd been trained for, but the one they'd chosen. They had saved their people, and in doing so, had saved themselves. Months turned into years. Sam and Alex grew, their bond as siblings as strong as the one between Duke and Duchess. The dogs aged gracefully, their muzzles growing gray, but their spirits remaining strong. They became therapy dogs, visiting schools and hospitals, sharing their calm strength with others who had experienced trauma. The conspiracy that had taken David and Robert Martinez was fully exposed, leading to reforms in fire safety regulations and oversight across the country. The Matthews-Martinez family, as they came to be known, testified at trials, appeared at commemorations, and became advocates for transparency and justice. But their greatest achievement wasn't in the public eye. It was in the quiet moments, Sam helping Alex with homework, Duke and Duchess sleeping peacefully in a patch of sunlight, Emma and Daniel sharing stories of David over coffee, Rose teaching both children to cook their father's favorite meals. On the 5th anniversary of the day Sam found Duke at the shelter, they held a celebration. Friends, neighbors, and even Marcus from the shelter came to mark the occasion. Duke and Duchess, now senior dogs but still vital, accepted the attention with dignified patience. Agent Coleman, who had become a family friend, brought news that made everyone cheer. The experimental program that had trained Duke and Duchess was being reformed, with a focus on therapy and service rather than military applications. Duke and Duchess would be honored as the inspiration for this change, their story proof that the greatest strength wasn't in aggression, but in loyalty, love, and the courage to trust after being hurt. As the party wound down and the sun set on that anniversary day, Sam and Alex sat with Duke and Duchess in the same backyard where so much had happened. The dogs were tired but content, their life's work complete, but their story far from over. "You saved us all," Sam told Duke, stroking the old dog's graying muzzle. "You and Duchess. You brought us together." Duke's tail wagged slowly, and he licked Sam's hand. Duchess nuzzled Alex, her eyes still bright with intelligence and affection. "We saved each other," Alex corrected, wise beyond her years. "That's what family does." And in that moment, with the stars beginning to appear overhead and the sound of Emma calling them in for dinner, everything was exactly as it should be. A family forged in tragedy, but defined by love, protected by two remarkable dogs who had refused to give up on finding their way home. The German Shepherd, who had been pushed away by everyone, had become the heart of a family that would never push anyone away again. Duke had shown them all that sometimes the most broken among us have the most to give, if only someone is brave enough to see past the scars to the soul beneath. As they went inside, Duke and Duchess following close behind, Sam turned back to look at the yard where so much had changed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new adventures, but tonight they were all together, all safe, all loved. And in the end, that was everything. If this incredible story of loyalty, love, and justice touched your heart, please like and share it with others who need to hear about Duke and Duchess's amazing journey. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. And don't forget to comment below. Where are you watching from? And what part of Duke and Sam's story moved you the most? Your support helps us share these powerful tales of hope and healing with the world. Remember, sometimes the most rejected souls have the most love to give. They just need someone brave enough to see it. Like, share, subscribe, and let's spread Duke and Duchess's message of hope together.